when a Jewish person, it would not I can't say it as race, but when a person who understands these occult practice, right, they get the Bible and understand it's talking about themselves. So this is something that they need to do. So the Jew will be you. You know what I'm saying? But then at the same time, if you get witchcraft practice on you, you got the sheep mind, you get lost in externalizing. And the moment that you start to speak or act in the nature of needing respiration, needing liberation, needing this worldview and calling it a God like it's outside of you, the moment that you are showing them you're a low-hanging fruit and you're giving your spiritual will to be rude, whether mentally or physically. So keep that in mind. Now, so let's get down to what the actual Jew is now. Now, Abraham is a Jewish thought, not an actual person. You know what I'm saying? This is an occult book. So keep this in mind. Abraham is a Jewish thought. Let me repeat. The whole book is titles, and every man is a different thought form, and every woman name is a different feeling and emotion. And for the most part, when you get into occult practice, you know, white and light represents the masculine energy or left brain, and dark and black represents the right brain energy or the chakras, the right brain chakras, which is the emotions. So anytime you in the Bible or any ancient text, because they're the same individuals doing this, you get a correlation to black or female, is going to be correlation to a demon or the negative energy. Anytime you get a correlation to white or a man or light, is going to be correlated to the positive energy or how to separate from a depression. Now, if I need the sheep to understand that, I'm going to make it as a story, as anthropomorphizing. This is our magic, anthropomorphizing, and able for you to understand it. But by you being a sheep 2,000 to 4,000 years later and still not understanding how I'm trying to convey it to you, and these are actual things you worship, this would turns into the worship of signs and symbols and sheep coming up with dumb arguments like creating another denomination, creating something like John Calvinism, Kemet people taking the Ankh, worshiping Osiris. All of these things are the Mennonite are not being deciphered. All of these arguments are created by sheep, early church debates and arguments. All of these are made up by sheep, not the actual people in rulership utilizing this as a cult. You get it? So even when it comes into the gas chamber and things of that nature, a lot of the witchcraft go towards a lot of these characters. A lot of these narratives are made up the same way like you talk about Obama and Hillary Clinton having something that we supposed to force them to allow us to let them know that they got something hidden in their emails. That's made up. So it's a plague on what you should do with your emails or not to do. And you're going to be the real one in trouble. That's how you see that's being practiced today. But the actual Jew are the people who came up with that idea 4,000 years ago as a part of their product to put on the table to be part of government, to be part of UN. Now, there's a few different fashions, but this is one of the ones that work. You see what I'm saying? Creating puppets, creating characters. So when you a low-hanging fruit and you out here talking about you the real Jew, you created no, it's like a spit in their face. You did not create no community, nor do you know what Jew actually is. And it's actually in their mind, what they call that? Blasphemy. Because you're actually saying it's a race. And they will even tell you it's not even a race. So you like the low-hanging fruit, speaking things you do not know of based upon the comfort zone they have allowed you to be in right now. That's how they look at it. You are the low-hanging fruit, speaking of things you have no business speaking of within the comfort zone that we allowed you to be in because we're trying to keep the world at peace. That's how they look at it. Now, check it out. Abraham is a Jewish thought they created as a way of life. Now, I already broke down Abraham, the ability to meditate, right? Because that was this is how language is made, based on linguistics and vibratory tones. The word is created with the vibe. So don't let no religious person that don't know how to do nothing but argue for their bias. So they'll take a Jesuit argument and be like, oh, since one word was made in another time, just because Jesus and demons sound the same, that don't mean that they meant that. No, yes, it do. That's how language is created, to rock you to sleep, to be arguing for something you still do not know. That's why Lucifer can mean a light bearer. And then you could be talking about Venus, Jesus, or the many different other book of other titles, calling different things gods and angels. So you to pick one of them and try to make it excuse is what makes you a demon. Now, I told y'all Abraham. So this is where when you meditate as above, so below on the hieroglyphics, right? As above, it's 6 a.m. in the morning. As below, it's the first vowel or the vibration you may be in when you are centered, the most centered. So that light you emit spread out over all the other chakras and things of that nature before you even made those. So, right? So this is Canaanite worship, because the ones who did that meditated and became the first crafters of the operational version of masonry, which was guilders, right? And then for the most part, with their ability to prey on a certain way of a structure, right? Then they created the operative that slowly but shortly became speculative, because they needed an excuse, or they needed a justification on why they had the idea in the first place. And the sheep don't have the idea, and why they the ones who have to teach the sheep to carve in the brick, and why they thought about it to put it here, this, that, and the third. So that slowly but shortly turned into speculative before that term speculative, right? Because they stole from the Indians, even understanding everything is from the inside out, but not putting that to use is where they jumped in with their cobalt mind. If you think your higher natures is the stars and your lower natures is everything from the world, the trees, the animals, and the things that make us fucking eat and our desires, then the things we built from these things, let's create even more devil in the details. We could make a gun out of these things and then say in the inside, this is how we make an opposition 180-degree angle, a sword, right? So this is where they took the Indian energy and took that beyond and called it speculatism, because now it's just not understanding everything is from the inside out. It's actually taking the outside things, chopping them down, making new technology, and then creating spirituality behind it. Yeah, my spirit is like this electric gun shooting ball. Yeah, my spirit is like this boat we just made off this tree. So now allegories become shit like Noah's Ark. Allegories become shit like Moses' staff. And now, if you're not into occult practices, you may not understand where these correspondences and starting points actually mean. So you end up arguing for another representation of men's mentality that came after the fact, and this what makes you a dumbass Christian today. But listen, check this out, right? Or a dumbass Israelite, or dumbass Pan-African, or dumbass Kemet. So look, Abraham is a Jewish thought. They created as a way of life. Abraham, Brahma, the spiritual system from the Middle East and the Indian, right? And then they took over the lower half and mixed and mingled them up. The first slave was Arabs, the first new men and women and shit. That's why all y'all mutts right now and the best spiritual systems you could cling to is sounding like an Arab. But that's besides the fact right now. When we start to talk about Abraham. They telling y'all in plain sight. So if you a person claiming you the real Jew, you a Hebrew Israelite, you just claiming you was the first slaves. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, so why you trying to tell everybody you was the first slaves and you was the first curse and that means something? When in reality, the reason why the Jews got power is because they created that narrative. They wasn't actually people who was enslaved. They created that narrative as an allegory to them to separate sheep-minded individuals and individuals who know how to think and build a community. And it's a thought pattern that they're going through. Not for you to take these things 2,000 to 4,000 years later and think people's mind states walk the earth and somehow floating around like a disembodied mind that created the universe. Y'all got to stop with that bullshit. Now look, check this out, right? Now, Abraham is a Jewish thought they created as a way of life. Abraham, and we can get into Brahma, and Ham, and how they're telling you they took over 3 geographical locations, right, by weaponry and shit like that, and then taking over their spiritual system, and not taking it over, creating one by claiming the land, and creating a spiritual system. So that became the first one world government, Abraham, the Abrahamic religion, the first rulership that was solidified. You see what I'm saying? The Abrahamic. Remember, before we get into 2,000 years later and all these laws and things of that nature, that was the law. Religious systems. Don't get it fucked up. Before you get into going to school for math and science and shit like that, back then, the occult school was understanding the hieroglyphics and how to make a language and how to structure a philosophy for the sheep and how to separate it by you not being a sheep because you have the ability to think and build amongst the people that's running the world at the moment. That was the occult schools. You You're not doing us no justice being a theologian in today's time, trying to teach us your bias the best. Your bias came somewhere from a Mason in the 1600s or something like that. We don't give a fuck about people who are already lost in the system that know a little bit more than you, and you just need soul salvation nowadays. Nobody give a fuck about what you talking about. Like, we trying to understand the real shit right now, bitch. You like wasting time being a fucking theologian. All right, now look, check this out. Right now, Abraham is a Jewish thought they created as a way of life. Abraham is an allegory they anthropomorphize to help understand their morals and principles that they also, and then look, also they explain it's a part of the government to help them continue to rule the world in some way, shape, or form. So it's one part of the government. And this part of the government fashioned character. So they figured out a lot of different ways to fashion character. Now, back in these days, if you was to go to school into the occult practices, you're understanding the esoteric astrology, right? So you're understanding what do the clock mean, the hieroglyphic or the cuneiform mean, as how we made a language off of it. So you're understanding the correspondence when it comes to the language that you could create off of it, because it's not a language itself, and how to create a specific version of a teaching. So you might like one specific week on the goddamn hieroglyphics, and that form of virtue and principle might be what you teach as a class. Now, getting into the concept, the 30 demons, the 30 degrees of the Leo. When we're in once we leave Canaanite, Taurus, we get into the tribe of Judah. This is Leo, fixated portion. The shadow government is doing the same thing. They just call it Leo right now. So when you think about Leo, what is Leo? Your character, expression, gifts, charismatic gifts. Think about the Universal Studios that they made off these things. Lion Gate Studios, DreamWorks. Think about when they did that first, when they run the world. The Giza pyramid. This is the government. This ain't, oh, we built the pyramid, y'all. This our people. No, this is like this has been the government for the past 4,000 years. Y'all retarded, like y'all don't get it, because y'all still lost in respiration and shit. God said and I'm gonna say all possibilities on live streams like this. All possibilities told you search for the practice. When you search for the money, search for the word, you're gonna get lost in another man's mind. When you search for the practice, you're going to actually find where that spirit was at to create that mentality, to create that mind. Let me repeat. I'm transmuting. God said, when you search for the history, search for the word, you're only going to get lost and find somebody's mind. And we know the mind could play tricks on you. So why give more credence to another person's mind when you know just as well they got a mind just like you? But God said, if you search for the practice, you know what space that spirit was in to create that state of awareness, to create that mind. And therefore, whether your mind have the ability to develop their same thoughts or not, you're able to observe the actions and the outcome of that thought anyway, whether you had the ability to do it or not. So once you do it in God's way, you will be able to see that very same energy that can be created in that space, if it's still lingering around or something that's not here anymore. And then when God show you how to separate from the lights, your body and the mind, and know how to calculate real spirituality, real spiritual science, you're able to track energies. And then when you track that energy from 4,000 years ago, that still got replicas of energies, even if you're born in today's time, boom, you're able to search and see where it's being played out. And then when you see it's being played out, you can't find a specific bloodline. You can't find a specific race. And then you do see a group of individuals that might skin and like try to appear like it could be a race. But then you know they're just sheep after the fact. Just like the KKK and just like the quote unquote black people. What you will start to be able to see is, oh, this is a practice. Then you go find the group that's practicing it. Then once you go find a group that's practicing it, it leads you to the same people that y'all actually complaining about now, just not knowing how to complain about them. Because you don't know what they're actually doing, and you're using how they got you in the first place to call themselves Jews to go against them. The whole purpose for you to be Malcolm X, the whole purpose for you to think you're doing something for a community, the whole purpose for there to be a celebrity and to use their influence to influence other to follow a narrative. The people who engineered that concept is the people who calling themselves Jews. You get it? And this is an early practice way back in the day. So for an example, this is why I always use Magic Johnson. Let's say back in the day before we called each other Jews, and we're a faction of the government, right? So at this time, before we even have a hard percentage level of education, religion, and business, it was purely politics and religion. It was purely politics and religion. So boom. Now, let's say we're trying to change. We don't want to hang people upside down anymore. Then we're creating golems to make rulers that's in our shit feel guilty about themselves from even doing that. That's like allegories like Pontius Pilate and shit, right? So look, say the sheep. We know that if we was just to give them, let's call it $1 million right now, maybe be gold or whatever. If we give them any form of power, they won't do nothing but kill themselves anyway. But we tired of coming to kill all these people because they ain't got no way to think. So we got to structure their character. So doing the teachings of when they're analyzing what we would call Leo right now, this is where they're developing a whole bunch of ideas from okay, let's create something of a character. And since we got this wealth in the world, we'll give crumbs to the sheep, but we'll pick certain sheep that think a certain way with this teaching. At this time, this will be Leo. Esoteric astrology, not necessarily being born at that time, but having the knowledge of the hieroglyphics and how we play out virtues anyway. Then later on down the line, it came into a subsidiary practice called astrology. But this is the true aspect. You get it? So now we'll be like, okay, we can fashion, as long as this person think right from our perspective, we'll pick them. That'll be God's chosen people, aka the only way they know what God wants them to do is through us. So it's like a Mesopotamian type of concept. So that we'll choose that person, give them crumbs amongst their sheep. The sheep, the low-hanging fruit, going to look at this person like they did something wonderful. Now, we're going to fashion this person in the way how we want this person to act for anyone to think that they have some form of power to be on our world stage. So they created a stage. This is where you get the words wrestling from. This is where you get the words platforming, Shakespeare. This is where you get the word like anything dealing with choreographic, charismatic, anything dealing with platforming and broadcasting. This is the Jews came up with that before they called them Jews. It's just a fashion of the government at this time. See what I'm saying? Now look, check it out. Now they like this. Boom. All right, we're going to pick one. And then, therefore, everyone who come after them, that's low-hanging fruit, they still could be governed in the mind to know what boundaries to cross by us using this person as an example. Now, look, they got real sticky with it after a while due to the fact of, certain individuals doing these things and trying to make their own community, become their own guilders, become their own Jew, they don't like that. How you going to use the shit that they gave you for you to feel like you somebody, but you're not pushing their sign and symbol anymore? You're not pushing their images anymore and things of that nature. So this came with the creation of plagues and creating fake stories for them on their broadcasting, so you wouldn't do this and it would actually happen to you. You will actually get put in a gas chamber. See what I'm saying? So for the most part, here we get role playing. Pardon me. Here's where we get role playing. So they, back in the day, in the medieval times, will go as far as JFK and a motherfucker. This is where Jesuits get the concept of sniping motherfuckers, but not doing it as much as now. Where they put somebody in a position, knowing that all the people is going to follow that person, but the moment this person have an idea that's separate than the Jewish thought, before we call it Jewish, right, and you're not pushing the sign and symbol, the moment that they kill you too, and then broadcasting on the news like it was this person's fault and they got killed by their own sheep, due to the fact of the money and the crumbs that they plant and infiltrate as a way of them saying that they can, while still at the same time, they probably doing all the the trigger pulling. So for the most part, this where when celebrities started, before they were celebrities, they were celebrated blood cells. They was all looking at us like Israelite blood cells, the lights under the sun and moon stars. And if you was born in that Easter over there, this was before we called ourselves human, we called ourselves Israelite. All right, now look. Has nothing to do with race. So I'll let you know, the rulers who ruling now was ruling back then. You getting into an argument of racing, that's wasting time. You don't even understand what's being practiced. And if you understand what's being practiced, your cracking it ass great grandma don't know nothing of no occult practices. So you trying to say somebody was in rulership without understanding magical thinking and occult practices, you lost in words at that point. You lost in race bait at that point. Like, you are one of the reasons that they created the term anti-Shemite. Because it's a concept of sham, where they set it up, shot that from Josephus, which is a micro-subsidiary attribute of Abraham, taking over 3 geographical locations. Then they went to go take her three more with 3 teachings: Josephus, Ham, and Shem. You know what I'm saying? But before we get into all that, look, check this out, right? So, Abraham is a Jewish thought, right? Created as a way of life. Abraham is an allegory they anthropomorphize to help you understand their morals and principles, and it's also a part of the government to help the government rule the world. During these times, right? During these times, astrology and signs and symbols was the school of thought to be prestigious in any form of government. And the group of Jews, before they call it, aka philosophers, came up with a virtue during the fixated portion of the summer solstice. And since they were deifying each transition of the sun, whatever they called it when it was in Leo was their god at that time, right? Because when they start to deify the idea that made them look at a character a certain way, then that's how they start to give praise to other things on top of that, right? Now look, so that's what they called the god at that time. That became the idea mythoform for the tribe of Judah, aka setting the stage for plagues and slaves who don't know how to use their own brain, aka the Jew created the concept of the stage celebrity as a government tactic so the rulers would stop hanging people upside down on crosses, aka a better way of dealing with the sheep and the low-hanging fruit. So since they came up with a way up in the world for all to live up under, this is how you produce a product. So if you could be a Galileo, see, that's why I go so hard, but people don't shout me out. People want to act like they don't see me and stuff like that, but I'm actually doing things the ancient way. Only thing you're going to hear from these people is regurgitation. You're not going to hear them. You're going to hear them following Galileo. You're going to hear them following any science, any electricity, anything that come out. And then they're going to look at me like I'm not doing something right, or I'm not respected because I'm not a part of the low-hanging fruit. And they're not going to look at themselves like they're low-hanging fruit because they got the slave mind. And that goes for Kemet individuals, Pan-Africans, Christians, New Agers, Truth Seekers, conscious community. Anytime you up under a subsidiary, you are the makeup of what the Jews have created 4,000 years ago on being a puppet to influence masses or small masses for your relative perspective. You see what I'm saying? So you're not coming up with anything new being a part of the Bole, or you're not coming up with anything new saying that you're trying to do something for the community. That's all. As soon as you come out, you're being a fake Mason and a fake Jew. And if you come out your mouth and say you are the real Jew, you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about at that point, using their tactics in the first place as a teaching and not doing it right. Because the first community you try to build is Islam. First community you try to build is Pan-Africanism. First community you try to... So y'all are low-hanging fruit without understanding how to build something for one for all. So their concept for one for all is like the Abrahamic religion. You being a Christian or Catholic, or y'all just fall under a one all something that a group of men and women came up with. So they're a little closer than God than you if you're going on their context of how they taught you what it means to receive something from God. This is why none of y'all practices work. And y'all all just lead to needing liberation and shit like that, because y'all don't even know what the fuck y'all even talking about. Like, a lot of y'all have no business even being into this kind of shit. And this is the people like the internet, like praise. Thousands of views, subscribers, live streams, and shit like that. A bunch of people who don't know shit. And then they look at my channel or look at me like I'm the one who don't, I'm more intelligent than all of these individuals. All you're going to hear from everybody is over exaggeration. And it's going to be over exaggeration of some shit you can study for yourself. It ain't gonna be nothing that you ain't like. That's because that's how I be seeing it. But I know a lot of y'all don't be studied. But when I come across a lot of channels, all I hear is a lot of shit I came across already in my studies. It just over exaggerated. And then that's what put me in my spirits that I be in all the time. Because these people will come up and like start to speak like they're intelligent or something like that. And then me being Uriel, sometimes I catch certain vibes that if these individuals was to come across my channel, they'll look at me a certain way. And ain't no way in hell a person like this, like these dumbass humans, is even intelligent. I don't give a fuck how old they is, what the fuck they be telling y'all and shit like that. This whole world dumb as fuck. Everybody masters at over exaggerations. There's a whole bunch of people talking about shit that you could come across. Nobody got no studies that you can't come across. So don't ever believe that. So if you studied, everything you hear out of other people's mouth is going to be some shit you came across. But the only thing is, you're hearing an over exaggeration of it. Shout out to Kales. Matt dang. You're hearing an over T Melody. You're hearing an over exaggeration of it. You know what I'm saying? Somebody's own interpretation of it. So you don't never hear it as is, like a person just give it to you. Like how I just give it to y'all. That's why I don't be respected. Because when you do something God's way, you make it back simple. It don't be no reason to argue for it anymore. Once I told you the light don't take no shape, ain't no reason for you to argue it no more. You can see that every day in life. So anybody still arguing for it, it's for a form of biasness. So that's how you see with these Kemet people and these Pan-African and these Christians. They